Hey, Joe.
Hey, Mark, how you doing today?
Good. How are you? Excited to
Good.
be doing the show here, the Quiet Light Brokerage Show, both podcast and YouTube channel, where we're going to be interviewing people, both clients and experts that deal with buying and selling online businesses. And I understand you recently had a conversation with somebody that recently bought a business through Quiet Light Brokerage.
I did. It was a fantastic interview. One of my favorite all-time listings because the seller was impeccable. He made me better at what I do. Quick story on the seller. He gave me a fake name, a fake email address, and everything else was honest and correct. And he kept that secret for about 3 months before he revealed who he really was. I didn't know him anyway, but he was afraid to give out confidential information because he was afraid of people trying to knock him off. So as part of this interview, we're using the buyer's first name only, and we're not giving the name of the product. We're not giving the category or anything like that. But what's really cool is that the type of buyer he is. He comes from the publicly traded company world. He was at the top of the food chain of $1 billion company and jumped out of that world and bought a 100% Amazon FBA business that was 24 months old. His friends and family thought he was crazy, but he's followed the growth, the paths to growth that the seller set up. And in 6 months, he's grown the business 300%. So it's a heck of a story. He's a great guy and did a fantastic job in the interview.
Holy cow. I got to go to 2 points here. One, the seller gave you a fake name and email address for 3 months. When did you find out? At what point did you find out?
About 3 months later, I was driving down the street having a call with him. We had 4 or 5 calls. I usually, as you know, the process is not, hey, who are you? Let's sign an engagement letter to sell your business. It's we want to build that relationship. We want to help them with, exit planning and valuations and get their business in a really good saleable position. And sometimes it's waiting because of age or whatever the case might be. You did the same thing for me back in 2010 when I sold my business. So we had built a good relationship, and it took him a few months to realize that I was honest and I was there to help and that we weren't lying, stealing, or cheating, or going to knock him off ourselves. And he finally fessed up. And I just laughed out loud. It was really kind of funny. He's a good guy.
So we didn't have the business listed at this point.
No.
Okay, because I was going to say, what did the buyers say when you told them?
No. I had probably spoken to this seller for a total of 8 months before we listed the business for sale. Okay. Pretty standard process. We work with them on timing and getting the profit loss right and the age of the business right and things of that nature. So
okay, yeah, all right. So the second thing I want to get to here, and this is actually more, I think, a better takeaway. The story, Joe, but anyone that's watching this, I want to tell a story because I think it's good to be humble in business. And this is a humiliating story for me to tell. But having a plan or being able to follow a good plan after you finish an acquisition, man, that's really, really important to do. As you know, Joe, I think it was now 5 years ago, very rare situation where I actually bought one of our clients' businesses. It was somebody that had come to me. It was really, really a small acquisition. It was going to be kind of a tough sell, but I liked the business. They were a series of e-commerce sites that were selling gun safes and fire-rated locking cabinets. And in my, I guess, ego, right, because I've been doing this at that point in time for 7 years or so, I thought, I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to buy this, and it looked really good. I love the age of these sites. And I got a year into post-acquisition, and I hadn't really grown the business at all. I really just kind of treaded water, but I was spending so much time on that business. I didn't have the same results of 300% growth. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal, but that's a result of having a plan, or at least following a plan that's been laid out for you.
Absolutely. We've all done it, Mark. You're not alone. I've done the same thing. The person I sold my business to back in 2010 didn't follow the plan, and he got in a little bit of trouble, but then, shifted and has done great ever since. This particular buyer that we're interviewing, his name is Kent. He is smarter than the average person in the room. He is experienced. He has bought and sold hundreds of companies through the publicly traded company that he worked with. There's no doubt in my mind that if he put together a different plan, that the business would still grow. But we talked long and hard about not, as my father always said, don't fix what's not broken. and this business was already growing, and there was a nice, clear path to growth that Kent just stepped into and followed. And the result is a 300% growth in 6 months, which is pretty incredible.
Awesome. Let's get on to the interview.
Ken, welcome to the podcast.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Good to be here.
Good to have you here, man. Hey, listen, you got a great story in buying this business, and I'm sure everybody wants to hear about the tremendous success that you had. But before we jump into that, why don't you share some background on yourself? As I looked at your LinkedIn profile before the call, I mean, you've worked for publicly traded companies, 3 or 4 of them, and now you're sitting at home with a putting green in the background. Why would you do that? Give us a little background of your story there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started off in public accounting with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was a CPA and an auditor, as well as a consultant for about 12 years with PwC. Then left and went to the Home Depot, and then also GE, both in finance roles, mainly on the controllership side. And then I spent the last 5 years with one of the fastest growing companies in the world, a company called XPO Logistics. And we grew from about 200 million to 15 billion in less than 4 years. And, was the chief accounting officer and also was in charge of global finance integration, and just got to the point where I wanted to, try something myself and run it myself. And, I saw a lot of interesting businesses over the years, and some very well-run businesses, and wanted to take those experiences and what I learned from working with some fantastic CEOs and other finance professionals, and kind of apply them myself. And so, decided to get out of the corporate world after 25 years and, give it a shot and just kind of go on my own and see what I can do.
Now, when you first started looking, did you think, okay, I'm going to buy an online business, which you ended up buying, or were you looking for anything that would suit you?
Yeah, I was really just focused on a business that was preferably an asset-light business where I, wasn't going to be investing a lot of plant and machinery and equipment. You really had no specific, area of focus other than I wanted a business that, had a strong brand, had a strong team, was growing, was capable of future growth, and something that I would enjoy doing. And, before I found this business, I went into diligence on, say, 5 or 6 other companies, and, found some things that were close and was actually under LOI on one company, and, found this business. And it just, it was the one company that I looked at, and the one type of business that I looked at, that the more I looked at it, the better it got in terms of, growth opportunities and kind of ticking the boxes for me.
Was one of those boxes working from home and seeing the family more and playing a little more golf?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was really maybe not one of the key boxes I was looking at, but that's definitely been a great side benefit. I traveled the globe in my old jobs, and was on the road 2 weeks a month at a minimum, and working 60, 70 hours a week. And, working from home has been a significant change for me. I mean, I'm a lot more efficient in terms of getting things done. I'm working when it's best for me and best for the family. And I've got 3 kids, and they keep my wife and I very busy. So being able to have a flexible schedule and work from home and travel with the family when we need to travel has been a benefit. Absolutely.
And now, you work for publicly traded companies. You must have had some great perks. You said you were working crazy hours, 60 to 70 hours a week. How in your right mind did you decide to buy an internet business, let alone an FBA business that's 100% Amazon?
Yeah.
What led you down that path?
Well, I mean, the main thing that I saw looking at the business was it was very well branded. It had excellent reviews. excellent seller feedback. And it also had a really clear path to growth. That to me was the most important thing. The previous owner, the seller, had done a fantastic job of laying out a plan for growth, and it included SKU expansion as well as additional channels. And as part of the transition process, we developed basically a SKU rollout project plan that we actually worked on during the integration phase. But that was really the main thing. It was the ability to grow the business using the existing Amazon listings and materials in a very simple way that I could execute as a newbie to not only e-commerce but also to Amazon. And also, I think the way that the seller and yourself presented the business to me in terms of the documentation during diligence was very helpful in terms of seeing a clear path to not only my ability to run the business, but my ability to grow it and make it more profitable.
Well, you said something there several times that I'm always harping on with clients that are selling their businesses, whether I'm doing exit planning 12, 24 months in advance, or they come to me and they want to sell right away. And that's that clear path to growth. Mm-hmm. It is the thing that buyers love the most, like you just, honed in on it. And this particular business, I think, what were there, 16 SKUs and maybe 6 or 7 were added in the last 8 months? Does that sound about right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. We had 17 SKUs when we closed, and
17.
Right, 6 to 7 were added in the last 6 months before they went to market.
Right. And so those 6 months were, it was only 6 months. So when you annualize that, that's already built in growth. Mm-hmm. And then if I recall, he had identified another, 20 or 30 SKUs that could be added by the new owner?
More than that. There was more than that. But as we went into kind of transition, kind of pre-close transition discussions, we said, let's just start with 10. But there were over 40 SKUs that were identified that we could expand into, given the product and the competition. So
good. I have to say that this particular seller, the package that we put together, it was one of the cleanest, most detailed packages that I've ever put together. And it was really because of the seller. And for those listening or watching, it's critical to understand that guys like Kent are not just buying a business. Tell me if I'm wrong here, Kent, but the person behind it is almost as important as the business itself, wouldn't you say, in the level of detail that he put together?
Absolutely. It was in my previous roles, we were very acquisitive, and we did diligence on over 50 acquisitions at the last company I was at, and so I saw a lot of companies and the documentation, and while this was a smaller organization, his attention to detail and the amount that he cared about his company and what he was trying to sell, and the process documentation and all the detailed financial information that he had was one of the reasons that, as I got into the deal, I felt more and more comfortable about closing and knowing the type of person that he was based on discussions during diligence and actual diligence, that I felt that he was a straight shooter and was going to be what he said was what I was going to get. And that trust factor was raised tremendously based on the level of detail and his understanding of the detail behind the business.
Yeah. Let's talk about when you first looked at the listing. Do you recall where your seller was?
I want to say he was in Vietnam, maybe Cambodia.
Right. Maybe both, right? Yeah, we listed the business in January. I think I listed it on a Tuesday, and on Thursday, he and his fiance of 4 or 5 months hopped on a plane to take a 4-month tour of Asia while running the business and going under contract a couple of weeks later and going through due diligence with you.
Yeah.
Did that make you nervous? Did that instill confidence that you could run the business from anywhere?
Yeah. it on 2 parts there. It made me a little nervous initially, just given the challenges we had at times with some of the technology and the phone calls in Cambodia. But
Yeah.
knowing that he was able to run the business while traveling the globe was very comforting, and that's something I've continued to be able to do myself in terms of family vacations and other things. I'm not tied to any single location, but initially I was a little concerned with him being overseas as we were going through diligence, but all the data was loaded up into a Dropbox, and access to him and to yourself throughout the process was not an issue. And most of my historical diligence had been done face to face across a conference table, and with some use of technology, obviously, in data rooms. But as we got into it and I dug into it, it really was really never an issue at all with him not being across the table from me or being in the same hemisphere.
So you did your due diligence. Obviously, you looked at the package, you made the offer, we put the LOI together, you dug into the due diligence. And if I recall, we did several conference calls, some screen shares going back and forth, and you had all of that third-party information in the Dropbox folder. Tell us about what you did on closing day and the week after, because I think you flew to Hong Kong. Is that right?
That's right. That's
to meet
right.
with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So as we were getting close to close, I started to develop a transition plan for the business, and shared that with the seller, and we both came up with a project plan as to what we were going to do over the next couple months to transition the business. So before I left to go meet him in Hong Kong, we had an agreed upon path for the next, let's call it, month, in terms of what are the key objectives, what are the priorities, what data and information do we need. And then I flew to Hong Kong, and we spent the better part of a week doing, kind of executing the transition and actually meeting suppliers. So while we were there, we spent a day with the suppliers, and basically 4 to 5 days together, kind of working through, the transition process. And a big, byproduct of that was documented work instructions for the major processes that we went through. And I still rely on those today. But I basically sat there and performed certain processes with the seller, and he documented them along the way, and made sure that when I left Hong Kong, I had a fully documented set of processes. I think we were probably 80 to 90% complete.
Excellent
Processes by the time I left. And I thought that was very important to me, just to know that I could run the business when I left Hong Kong. And as I said, I continue to use those work instructions today.
So would you recommend anyone that's selling their business to put together standard operating procedures for the buyer to take over?
Oh, absolutely. That's the only way I would do it. I mean, I think it's something that you've got to, it does take some time to develop, and my seller developed most of them as we were together working through the process, which was good, because there are certain things that when you just sit down to try to document a process, you might miss it unless you're actually doing it. But I don't think there's, I would never buy another business like this without going through that process. And, those things can be done in advance, but they also, I think, need to be done during integration and transition, just to make sure they're accurate.
Okay. Did the training end when you left Hong Kong, or was there still time in the transition and training period that was part of the asset purchase agreement?
Yeah. So we had 80 hours overall, probably went through 40 of those while we were in Hong Kong. But I continue to this day to correspond with the seller, and we've got a very good relationship. And, even once we get past 80 hours, there's going to be no question in my mind that he's going to, be responsive and helpful. And, we've had numerous phone calls and email, transitions, and I ask for his advice. We're 6 months in, and I still, send him questions and get his views on things, because while Amazon at a higher level is a relatively easy place to do business, there's lots of nuances that it takes a while to really understand and grasp. And I'm 6 months in, and I'm still scratching the surface in certain areas. And so I still, rely on him and, rely on the advice that you gave me early on, which was, just don't try to change a lot too quickly. And,
right. Don't break it.
Don't break it,
Yeah.
and I've evolved it, let's call it. And I've been able to grow it using the processes that he's had in place. And in certain cases where I've tried to change some things, I've stubbed my toe and I've kind of reverted, and I've learned some lessons. But it's selling on Amazon and thinking about beyond Amazon. There's lots of nuances to the Amazon world, and the rules have changed a lot over the past 6 months or the past year with Amazon in terms of service around seller reviews. So just really trying to make sure that I'm staying in compliance is always top of mind to me.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk first. I want to learn about the workload. You said you were working 60 to 80 hours, traveling 2 weeks a month.
Yeah.
In your previous corporate jobs. What is your life like now in terms of workload?
Yeah. So I would say the first month or two post-close, I was still working a lot. I mean, I was learning the business. It was taking me longer to do things than obviously the seller. So I would say for the first, month or two, it was 50, 60 hours a week. And
was that doing tasks or was that learning processes and things of that nature?
It was both.
And were you launching the new SKUs?
I was launching new SKUs. Through? So I was in the process of rolling out, 5 new SKUs in the first couple of months. So if you pull that out, it's definitely less than 50 hours, probably more, closer to 40.
Yeah, I think when we launched the listing, if I look back, I think your seller was working probably less than 20, 25 hours a week.
That's right. Yeah.
And then you bought it and you're immediately double that. That's kind of what you're used to. So it was probably nice to be able to do that, but do it from home.
Yeah, that's right.
You were launching new SKUs. Now you're 6 months in. Has it settled down at all? Are you still putting in that amount of work every day or every week?
I mean, if just in a pure maintenance mode, it's maybe 24 hours a week. There have been phases where I've been at 24 hours a week, but I've continued to add new SKUs and also look towards new markets to expand into. And so that's, you can work as much as you want, or you can maintain it at the current levels and just have the organic growth within Amazon, and work, 20, 24 hours a week. So it really just depends on what your goals and objectives for the business are.
So in this time period, you've added new SKUs. Have you gone beyond? I think we were Amazon.com. You might have been in the EU as well. Is that right?
UK only.
UK only. And are you still in those 2 locations, those 2 platforms, or have you expanded beyond that?
Yes, we've expanded into the rest of Europe. And we've gone from 17 SKUs in the US up to 30.
Wow.
UK, we've gone from 10 to 17, and now we're looking at probably another 4 to 7 SKUs in the next few months in the US. And then we're also looking at Walmart.com, eBay, Jet, and a couple other different locations. And then I've kind of scratched the surface a little bit in Japan and might be heading there as well.
Now, you and I have talked about the value of 100% FBA business. Let's call it just Amazon.com, that it has a certain multiple range. And then if you expand to the other countries, that you may get a little bit more bump in the multiple. But when you go to Walmart, you go to Jet, you go to daily deal sites, and you have your own URL and business, that it jumps it even higher, maybe another 15 to 20%. Mm-hmm. Is your situation that you're just growing so much within the Amazon atmosphere that it's your main focus and you're just trying to keep up with growth? Or are you looking short or long term at going beyond Amazon into not just the other third-party platforms, but to your own URL and being able to sell directly to customers there?
Absolutely. I mean, as I think back, and when I first got into this, I really thought I was, in an e-commerce business, but really what it was an Amazon business. And what I'm trying to evolve to is a true e-commerce business, multi-channel, There's going to be fulfillment outside of Amazon. And the way that I'm thinking about it is it's kind of a 2 or 3 dimensional view. It's let's continue to grow SKUs within Amazon. Let's grow countries within Amazon. But then let's also take those same SKUs and take them to other platforms and other channels, including my own website. And we do have a website, but it's not heavily frequented. So as I think about kind of the next phase for me, it's the other channels and the other platforms. And then from there, it's going to be, okay, how do I drive traffic to my own website with Facebook ads, Google AdWords, other marketing opportunities. And I've started to talk to a couple different, digital marketing agencies to think about what that process looks like and what's the investment, because it's more expensive to drive traffic that direction, but you also have a higher return on investment because you're not paying the commission to Amazon. So, that's kind of the longer term strategic plan is multi-channel. And when I think about multi-channel, it also includes my own website and driving traffic. But that is kind of the third phase beyond the multi-channel expansion that I'm actively engaged in as we speak.
Okay, so let's talk about what you've accomplished in these 6 months, right? 2 months, you were working crazy hours, trying to learn the business, doing the best you could not to fix what wasn't broken, right? And we've talked about that. I had that experience when I sold my business.
Yeah.
He thought he was the smartest guy in the room, no matter what room, and he broke it. All he had to do was sit back and collect money, and he broke it. He's fixed it and done a great job since. But you were patient, but you worked hard and you expanded it. What have you achieved since then in terms of numbers? We won't give specific details on what you bought the business for, but maybe you can give us some general idea of how the growth is looking.
Yeah, so there was some obviously SKU expansion that I did from 17 to 30 in the U.S. And there was already organic growth built into the existing SKUs, and revenues have not quite tripled, but they're close on a monthly basis. And
tripled.
Yeah, I'd say it's two, between 2.5 and 3 times.
That's incredible.
And a lot of that, as I said, was built-in growth from the SKUs that he had recently launched.
Right.
And hopefully the goal for me is to grow the company to 5x within 3 years from a revenue and cash flow perspective. And I think there's a path to that, and that path still goes back to the expansion plan that existed when we first started doing diligence on the company itself.
It sounds like you're on track to that if you're 6 months in and you've already tripled revenue. Now I don't want to take anything away from you, Kent.
Yeah.
Is the revenue tripled because of you or because of the path to growth that your previous owner set up?
Well,
a combination of both.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely set up by the way that he organized the company historically and the processes that he had in place.
Okay.
And if I was just going to stay on Amazon, I mean, the incremental work around adding 13 SKUs is not that significant. I mean, each listing takes a couple hours to set up, and I've just got to invest some inventory. I think kind of what I've added on top of what he had was, a little more capital to invest, and also maybe a little more willingness to go a little faster with the SKU expansion,
right? And
taking some risk with having multiple SKUs going live at the same time, and hoping that the reviews come in like you expect them to. Right. So there's a bit of a higher risk factor there. But from my experiences, especially with my last company, our CEO was very focused on grow as fast as you can. You're not going to get everything 100% right. Let's get 80% of it right, but just go. And the platform that the seller set up in terms of the growth plan and the listings and all the different listing documentation that he had just made it so easy for me to kind of turbocharge it. So I've just kind of taken his existing platform, added a little fuel to it with capital and with some just a faster pace. And that's knock on wood has been successful, and hopefully we'll continue to do that as we look at the other marketplaces.
Well, you picked a winner, that's for sure. I would imagine that people listening or watching this are thinking, gosh, if this business is so great, why did your seller sell it? And I just want to give a little background there and then get your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I think he was just under 30 years old. He went to grad school, was working at a publicly traded company, and thought, hey, I'm going to give a shot at this Amazon space. Tried it, and he called me, I want to say 8 months prior to listing the business for sale. He actually gave me I don't know if I told, I think I told you this. He gave me a fake name, fake email address, and we talked for a couple of months. And finally he fessed up and said, look, that's not my name. This is my real name. I'm just really, really, private. I don't want to give away any information. But he had a family business, and it was always his plan to go into that family business. He was living in San Francisco. I know we've talked about him being all over the world, but he was living in San Francisco and had a family business elsewhere that he was going to join and take over. It was quite a substantial family business. He obviously developed the education and the business experience, and then launched his own business and sold it here quite successfully. Maybe he left a lot of money on the table, and I think he can look at it that way and say, oh, geez, maybe I should have held on for another year. And we always talked about that. Yeah. The longer he held on with the growth that he had, the more valuable the business became. It was, I think, 24 months old when you bought it. Yeah. We wanted to keep it, have it grow and be as old as possible so that the value would grow, both in terms of the multiple and in terms of the bottom line trailing 12-month discretionary earnings. But when you looked at this and you've looked, like you said, you were under LOI with a few or one and looked at a few. When you looked at it and looked at his reasons for selling, which was I'm selling, I always plan to build it and sell it to go join a family business. How did you feel about that, and what other reasons did you see for people selling businesses? In this case, a great business that had built-in growth with it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that initially I was a little skeptical and
understandable.
But the more I got to know the seller, the more I understood the type of person he was and how he operated, and the fact that his family and his background had really all been set up to, from an education perspective and a work perspective, in terms of the roles he took, were really positioning himself for the last 10 years to go back and run the family business. So kind of once I understood his background and the roles he had taken and why he had taken them, and I understood what his family business was, it made it easier for me to get my head around that. But that's always a risk as you look at any business to acquire, is why sell now? And it's the other companies that I looked at, it was retirement, or want to spend more time with the family, or want to invest in a different project, and obviously as you peel back the onion, you really need to make sure you're comfortable with the why. And not get caught up in kind of deal fever just to do a deal.
Yeah, I think there's all sorts of reasons. I think, like you said, retirement, moving on to another project, spend more time with the family. That one often doesn't sit well when you say, well, I'm only working 25 hours a week. Spend more time with the family.
That's right.
But it's the life of an entrepreneur. The startup entrepreneurs can only do something for so long before they get bored and want to move on to the next project. Yeah. In this case, this was the plan all along, and it's worked out well. Yeah. You're an interesting situation here, entrepreneur. Now that you are an entrepreneur, you've always been in the corporate executive level, and now you're an entrepreneur. You've got a plan in place. You're thinking 5X in 5 years, and then exit, move on to the next adventure?
I don't know.
Work for your wife at home? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm having a blast with what I'm doing right now, growing the company. Good. and kind of working in areas of a company, quote unquote, that I haven't worked in terms of product development, marketing, advertising, supply chain, IT. So I'm just learning a ton right now.
You're doing it all.
Yeah, and it's I'm doing it all, but I'm also doing it all. right? I'm doing it all myself, and I've
You're
got
doing
some
it
help.
all. That's exactly. You empty the trash as well, right?
That's
The
right.
life
That's
of an
right. So
entrepreneur.
I'm doing everything right now, which is fine. And my wife's helping out a little bit, but
Excellent.
I'm having a blast and I'm enjoying growing it. And we're looking at some different, expansions, kind of adjacent SKUs. But for now, it's just like, just trying to really grow what I've got, and as I think about investments, not only an investment in our business, but other investments, I'm like, well, where can I get the highest return of investment? And every time I look at other opportunities, I come back to, it's just so easy for me to grow this business with the platform I've got. So just do everything I can to grow it as fast as I can, because that's the best return on investment I've got. But, for me, it's, I really don't have a, predetermined time frame. Just depends on how things unfold over the next couple of years. But, for now, it's been an absolute blast, and, just the ability to have flexibility in my schedule and watch something grow and create something, and, take something that, somebody had a fantastic foundation for, and continue to grow it. Even though I didn't start it, from scratch, and it's a different experience for the people that do start it from scratch. But, for me to be able to take the foundation and kind of see it grow and add my touches to it, and think back to how I've seen other companies grow and try to apply that, has been great. But it's also,
Has that helped a lot, your previous business experience? Because this is brand new to you, where you're doing absolutely everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in my roles, I was able to see not just the finance function, but the commercial function, the IT organizations, the just kind of different aspects of the business, and maybe not run those aspects, but have seen enough and been experienced enough and worked in some big organizations where I can think about, okay, what would they have done in this situation, and try to do that. And so, to me, even though I've been, was in the corporate world for 25 years, I've seen enough businesses and seen enough successful businesses and unsuccessful businesses, and have the opportunity now to kind of go apply that stuff. And I'm not getting it all right. I'm getting a lot of things wrong, but, it's fun to do that, and, make mistakes, and also see things work that you thought could work.
Right.
And that's been the most exciting part about this. But it's also, as a new entrepreneur, it's a little scary because I'm not working with a net anymore, right? It's like I don't have 20 consultants behind me or a whole executive team that I can go to talk about things.
Right.
Right.
It's just you, right? You don't have any staff. You got some remote contractors that help you, but is that right?
That's it. No, I mean, I've basically got myself and my wife, and I've got, to be honest with you, there's some great online communities that I use as resources, for other, FBA, sellers and other e-commerce sellers. And I tap into those guys as my consultants on, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you guys think? Have you tried that? And that's been extremely valuable, because I'm new to this. But
I got to tell you that didn't exist when I sold my business in 2010. I launched it in 100% online in 2005 and grew it, sold it in 2010. It didn't exist. And I was not selling on Amazon. So the resources that you have, whether it's, Facebook, mastermind groups, events that you can go to, I mean, they're there for you, and you can pick the minds of people that have done it before you.
Yeah, that's been extremely, extremely helpful. And just, as I said, still going back to the seller and asking questions and getting his viewpoints on things. And, but it's, it's a different lifestyle. It's a different, set of, stresses. It's not a, as they say, a set it and forget it business, right? You've got to still manage it. You still got to run it. You got to be diligent. You got to provide outstanding customer service. And that's something that's at the top of my list every day is making sure that I'm being extremely responsive to customers.
That's incredible. Given the corporate level that you were at, and the 20 consultants that you had, and growing the business to $1 billion business, you're now handling some customer service emails and questions, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. I handle all of them, almost all of them.
That's incredible.
And
do your friends think you're nuts? Your colleagues that were at this level?
Yeah, they do, but they also they don't have the flexibility that I do, right? And
right.
I've had some people that have always been in the corporate world and have just said you're crazy, and I'm like, well, I've got other friends that say you're living the dream, and
they don't have a putting green in the background in their office, right?
No, and it's
a tennis ball back there for a dog, I assume, right?
That's right. That's
your
right.
assistant.
Yeah, so I have been able to play quite a bit of golf, but I still work, and I still work hard. I enjoy the work, and I enjoy growing it. But it's a very different atmosphere. I mean, I don't have I used to have a team of 1,600 people working around the globe for me, and now just you don't have the interaction day to day with the team, and so you've got to find ways to get interactions that are meaningful and are beneficial to help you continue to learn the business and run the business, and but working from home and working remotely has been awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
good. That's fantastic. You and I have talked about this before. At Quiet Light, we're really focused as much on the buyer as we are on the seller. Technically, we work for the seller, but we can't do our job well unless we help you, the buyer, as much as possible. And it's a big responsibility because people are investing in many cases their life savings in buying an online business. Do you have any advice for newbies like yourself that are coming in? Any things that you must do in the process of buying an online business?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was on a couple different levels. I mean, I would say be comfortable with what you're going to be selling, obviously, and you can understand it. And I looked at quite a few listings that I just really couldn't explain to my 12-year-old daughter what it was, and so I knew I couldn't run that business. I couldn't understand it. Didn't have the right background. And some of the businesses, the online businesses, were pretty technical. And I'm not I'm a CPA, so I would say make sure you can obviously explain the business and can understand it. And then also I would say make sure that you've got after your first couple of discussions with the seller that you feel comfortable that they're trustworthy, that
you like them.
They're telling you like them, you can deal with them, and because you're going to continue to have a relationship. It's not a get through diligence, close the deal, and move on, right? It's like you're going to need this person as a lifeline, and you want to be able to have a good relationship with them, and not only a relationship through diligence and make sure that you're getting a good deal, but also, or a fair deal, but also that after the fact you're going to be able to correspond with them and have a relationship. And then, just from a diligence perspective, just really dig into the numbers. And if you can't dig into the numbers, then make sure somebody else can. And the data within Amazon is very conducive to an audit and to diligence. And, there's lots of tools out there to help you manage the data and understand the data. But it's as easy as just really following the cash. I mean, every 2 weeks, somebody's getting a settlement from Amazon. You can tie that out to a bank statement, and you can tie that cash, back into their ledger, and just make sure you go through that process and make sure you understand how the dollars are flowing out of Amazon into their P&L. And, also focus on, obviously the ad backs, if there are significant ad backs, and make sure you're comfortable that those are not recurring items. And with diligence in any company, that's important.
Right.
I would say that the third thing for me was just, the growth plan, and making sure you're comfortable that you can execute on that, and that the business is capable of supporting it, and that your suppliers are capable of supporting it. If that's in fact what you want to do, if you want to grow the business, and I would assume most people do, but make sure you're comfortable that the seller has a good plan that he can document for you, not only in terms of process, but in terms of additional SKUs and products, and you understand what the process is and what the SKUs and products are as you go into diligence and as you transition. And that was one of the top, 3 things that we did during the week in Hong Kong that I spent with the seller was, not only did we document the process, but we actually began to execute it on a couple of products, like, just, face to face. Let's show me exactly the 12 steps. Let's go do it. And that was important. And then, from a legal perspective, I would say, get comfortable around patents and trademarks. Make sure that you don't underspend on your attorney. Make sure that,
travel. I think some people hesitate to hop on a plane and go see someone that they're spending 100,000, 500,000, million. Get on a plane. And go see that seller face to face in diligence or, at closing. You could do lots of face to face Skype or Zoom meetings if it's
absolutely
more expedient. But
we decided not to do face to face diligence. We did some Skypes, and had I not been as comfortable with the seller, I might have required that before we closed. But we basically closed on a Friday, and I was on a plane Saturday to Hong Kong, and just kind of kept it going from there. But the attorneys are important. I would say just don't let them run the show. Make sure you're in control.
They work for you.
They work for you. They've got ideas on how they want to do things, and they can be sticklers for certain things. And you've got to use your own judgment on what's important to you, what's important to the seller. But obviously, you got to take their guidance, because they do multiple deals a week, a month, a year, and they've got more experience. But trust your instinct, trust your relationship with the seller, and get behind the numbers, get behind the product, get behind the processes, and those are the things that were real important to me.
And do you feel like you've made a good investment in that process?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I feel like I made a good investment in the business. I felt that the way that we set up diligence and the way we set up transition was done well, but it was really all driven based on the seller and what he had done, and the infrastructure he had built, and the IT stack around Amazon that he had in place, and his level of detail, and his really want to see me to succeed in the end, right? And he wanted it to be a good experience for him and for me, and that was really probably the most important thing behind the transaction and the transition process.
And honestly, I find that to be the case with most of the people that we work with. They want to see the business succeed. It's their baby. They built it from scratch, and they want to see somebody take it to the next level. Yep. Even if they're emotionally tired of the business, which is often the case with an entrepreneur, sometimes they wait too long and they become emotionally tired, which is not the advice I'd give them. Sell with a plan in mind. But they do want to see it succeed, and they do want to be there to help after closing. And most buyers naturally are skeptical of that. But it's good to hear that you feel like he's going to be there and take your call, take your Skype message or text whenever you need him to be, which is great. I imagine in time, you're going to know more about the process in the business than he is. And it's just a matter of that time getting behind you when you're the expert and he's the expert in his family business. The only other thing I would think would make a difference is, in terms of your expertise and your background and the diligence that you did. And I think it's really critical. You said, if you can do it yourself, do it. If you can't, outsource it. And there's plenty of options for that. We've worked with Chris over at Centurica on lots and lots of different transactions. And he basically has a firm that does what you did in this case. I think it's important for the buyer to always go through the numbers so that they see them and understand them and match them up. It's not hard. Like you said, especially with an Amazon business, you see the third-party reports, you check it up against deposits, check your vendor invoices, and so on and so forth. Not overly complicated. Your seller, I'm curious, does he know that you've tripled the business in 6 months of ownership? And if he does, how does he feel about that?
Yeah. I mean, I've told him about what we've been doing, and he's been very happy for us. And he knows the SKU count and where we're going. And keep him up to date kind of strategically where I'm going and get his feedback on that, right? Hey, I'm thinking about doing X or Y or Z, and say, hey, what do you think about that? And he's very supportive, and he is aware of, of the growth we've had, and is very happy to see us succeed. And I think, he knows a lot of that is based on what he had done already. Right. And so he appreciates, the growth and knows that he had a big part in that.
Excellent. Well, listen, man, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for him. It all worked out. It's going great. Hopefully in another 3 to 5 years, we'll have a conversation where you've 10 times it, not 5 times it.
Let's hope so.
And then all your friends who thought you were crazy, you'll be laughing at them because you don't ever have to work again for the rest of your life.
That's right.
Well, it's great, man. I appreciate you coming on. For those watching the podcast, please go ahead and like it on the bottom of your screen. Listening to it on Audible or iTunes, please share it, like it, and do what you can. Kent, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate you sharing your success and your experience and helping other folks understand the process.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.